Bay of Pigs, Cuba, April 17, 1961, 1:15 a.m. 1,400 men are crossing the Caribbean in the dark. They call themselves Brigade 2506. Cuban exiles, former soldiers, students, farmers, lawyers, businessmen, trained for over a year by the Central Intelligence Agency at secret camps in the mountains of Guatemala. They have been told that when they land, the Cuban people will rise up to meet them. They have been told that Castro's air force will already be destroyed. They have been told that if things go wrong, the United States military will back them up. Every one of those things is wrong. By the time the sun rises on April 19th, the operation is over. 1,189 men are in Castro's custody. 4 American pilots are dead. The CIA's most ambitious covert operation since the Second World War has collapsed in 72 hours. And the President of the United States has to stand in front of the world and explain how it happened. To understand the Bay of Pigs, you have to go back to the man who started it. Not John F. Kennedy, but his predecessor. In March 1960, President Dwight D. Eisenhower authorizes the CIA to begin training a paramilitary force of Cuban exiles for a potential invasion of Cuba. Castro has been in power for just over a year. His alignment with the Soviet Union is becoming increasingly clear. The Eisenhower administration calculates that a popular uprising, backed by a trained external force, could topple his government before it becomes a permanent Soviet foothold 90 miles from Florida. The CIA's director, Allen Dulles, is enthusiastic. Dulles is a legend inside the agency, a veteran of wartime intelligence operations who oversaw the successful CIA-backed coups in Iran in 1953 and Guatemala in 1954. He believes this operation is within the CIA's capabilities. He believes the Cuban people are waiting to be liberated. He believes the plan will work. He is wrong on every count. But in 1960, nobody inside the CIA is saying that out loud. The agency begins recruiting Cuban exiles from the large communities in Miami and throughout the United States. The recruits are taken to secret training camps in the Guatemalan highlands, designated as Brigade 2506. At peak training, the brigade numbers approximately 1,400 men. They are taught amphibious assault tactics, guerrilla warfare, and air operations. The CIA builds them a small air force of surplus World War II B-26 bombers, repainted to look like defecting Cuban Air Force aircraft. The plan, as designed under Eisenhower, calls for the brigade to land on the coast of Cuba, establish a beachhead, and trigger a popular uprising against Castro. Once a liberated zone is established on Cuban soil, a government in exile will be installed and recognized by the United States, giving Washington a legal pretext for more direct support. It is an ambitious plan built on 3 critical assumptions. First, Castro's air force will be destroyed in preliminary strikes before the landing. Second, the landing will trigger a mass popular uprising against Castro's government. Third, if the operation begins to fail, the brigade can melt into the mountains and begin a guerrilla campaign. All 3 assumptions are wrong. And by the time anyone with the authority to stop the operation realizes this, it is already in motion. In November 1960, John F. Kennedy defeats Richard Nixon in one of the closest presidential elections in American history. He is 43 years old. He takes office in January 1961 and inherits, among everything else on his desk, a fully developed CIA invasion plan for Cuba that is already in an advanced stage of preparation. Kennedy has doubts. His instinct is that an operation of this scale cannot be kept secret, and that if American involvement becomes public, which he believes it will, the diplomatic fallout will be catastrophic. He is also advised by his military's Joint Chiefs of Staff that the plan has a reasonable chance of success. He is told by Allen Dulles and Deputy Director Richard Bissell that the operation is sound. What Kennedy is not told, or not told clearly enough, is the degree to which the plan depends on elements outside anyone's control. The popular uprising is not a supporting element of the plan. It is the plan. Without it, 1,400 men on a beach in Cuba are simply 1,400 men on a beach in Cuba, with no reinforcement and no exit strategy. Kennedy makes a fateful decision. He approves the operation but imposes conditions designed to reduce the visibility of American involvement. The original landing site, the city of Trinidad on Cuba's southern coast, is too close to populated areas and too obviously suited for a large amphibious assault. Kennedy orders the CIA to find a more remote location. The CIA selects the Bay of Pigs, a remote inlet on Cuba's southern coast, surrounded by swampland, 60 miles from the nearest mountains. It is less visible than Trinidad. It is also, as events will demonstrate, a significantly worse tactical choice. April 15, 1961. 2 days before the landing, 8 CIA B-26 bombers, painted in Cuban Air Force colors, take off from Nicaragua and strike 3 Cuban airfields. The objective is to destroy Castro's entire air force on the ground before the invasion begins. The strikes fail. They destroy some aircraft, but leave Castro's air force, including his T-33 jet trainers and Sea Fury propeller fighters, largely operational. The jets in particular will prove decisive. Then the cover story unravels in public. One of the B-26 pilots, flying a plane painted to appear as a defecting Cuban aircraft, lands in Miami and gives a press conference. Within hours, journalists have identified inconsistencies in his story. The aircraft's nose gun ports are painted over. Real Cuban Air Force planes have working guns. The tail number does not match Cuban Air Force records. Within 24 hours, the operations cover is effectively blown at the United Nations, where Cuba's foreign minister presents the evidence to the General Assembly. Kennedy is furious. His Secretary of State, Dean Rusk, recommends canceling the second wave of airstrikes scheduled for April 16, the strikes designed to finish destroying what the first wave missed. Kennedy agrees. It is the decision that dooms the operation. April 17, 1961. 1:15 a.m. Brigade 2506 begins landing at the Bay of Pigs. Almost immediately, everything that can go wrong does. The CIA's intelligence has identified the beach as clear of obstacles. It is not. The shallow waters approaching the beach are riddled with coral reefs that the CIA's planners either missed or dismissed. The landing craft begin running aground. Equipment is damaged. The unloading of critical supplies, ammunition, communications equipment, medical gear, is delayed by hours. On the beach itself, the brigade encounters another problem. A local militia patrol is in the area. The patrol spots the landing operation and radios Castro's headquarters. The element of surprise is gone within the first hour. By dawn, Castro's forces are mobilizing with a speed and coordination that stuns the CIA. Castro himself takes personal command of the military response. He moves his reserve forces to cut off inland routes from the beachhead. He deploys his surviving aircraft, the T-33 jets that the canceled second airstrike was supposed to destroy. Those jets sink 2 of the brigade's most critical supply ships. The Houston, carrying ammunition and communications equipment. The Rio Escondido, carrying 10 days of supplies and the brigade's entire reserve of aviation fuel. Both ships go down on the morning of April 17th. The brigade is on the beach. Their supplies are at the bottom of the Caribbean, and the popular uprising they were told would meet them has not materialized. In Washington, the situation is deteriorating in real time. CIA Director Allen Dulles is not even in the country. He is giving a speech in Puerto Rico, having been advised the operation would succeed quickly and his absence would help maintain the fiction of American non-involvement. At the White House, Kennedy receives a stream of increasingly desperate situation reports. The brigade is holding the beach but cannot advance inland. Without air cover, the supply ships will not return. Without supplies, the men cannot sustain the beachhead. Brigade commanders radio CIA handlers with a single urgent request: air support. The original plan includes provisions for American air cover if the operation faces catastrophic failure. Kennedy refuses to authorize it. He has already been advised that direct American military involvement will trigger a Soviet response. He will not escalate. The CIA asks for permission to send 6 unmarked American jets to provide air cover for 1 hour, enough time to allow resupply. Kennedy says no. By April 18th, the brigade is surrounded. Castro has committed 20,000 troops and his entire surviving air force to containing the beachhead. The brigade numbers 1,400 men with limited ammunition and no resupply route. On April 19th, after 3 days of fighting, Brigade 2,500 CIA Commander Jose Perez San Roman transmits a final message to CIA handlers. I have nothing left to fight with. AM taking to the swamps. I cannot wait for you. He receives no response. By the end of April 19th, organized resistance is over. 1,189 men are captured. 114 are killed. The rest scatter into the surrounding swamps, where most are eventually found and taken prisoner. The aftermath is swift and brutal, politically, institutionally, and personally. Kennedy goes on national television and accepts full responsibility for the failure. Privately, he is incandescent with rage at the CIA. He reportedly tells his aides he wants to smash the agency into 1,000 pieces. He fires Alan Dulles, Deputy Director Richard Bissell, and Deputy Director Charles Cabell within months of the operation's collapse. The captured members of Brigade 2506 are held in Cuban prisons for 20 months. Kennedy negotiates their release through back channels. The United States pays a ransom of $53 million in food and medical supplies to secure their return. On December 23, 1962, the brigade members arrive in Miami. The operational and strategic consequences reshape American foreign policy for years. The failure at the Bay of Pigs convinces Kennedy that the CIA's assessments cannot be trusted without independent verification, a lesson that will prove critical during the Cuban Missile Crisis 18 months later, when Kennedy insists on seeing the raw intelligence himself rather than relying on agency summaries. It also intensifies the obsession with Castro that produces Operation Mongoose, the mob CIA assassination plots, and 2 decades of covert action that never achieves its objective. The Bay of Pigs does not end the CIA's Cuba problem. It creates it. Go back to the beach. April 17, 1961. 1:15 a.m. 1,400 men crossing the Caribbean in the dark, believing in a plan that was built on assumptions nobody had tested and authorized by a president who had doubts he did not act on firmly enough. 72 hours later, the beach belongs to Castro. It will belong to Castro for the next 47 years. What the Bay of Pigs actually is, underneath the military failure and the political fallout, is a story about what happens when institutional momentum overrides honest assessment. When the people responsible for evaluating a plan are the same people who built it. When the pressure not to appear weak overrides the judgment that something is wrong. The CIA was so certain the plan would work that it never seriously